A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Today's top story, the flavor merger of the century between the Peanut Butter Group and Chocolatey Corp. Joining me is a PBC executive.
Thanks for having me, Barry.
Now, how did you know the merger and the byproduct of it, Jif peanut butter and chocolate flavored spread, would be a success?
You know, it was a gut feeling, a rumbling, if you will. Besides, they're two titans of taste.
Very true. Goes great with pretzels.
And pancakes.
Apples too, I bet. Try Jif PBC today.
Hello and welcome back to another Cardiff Central podcast. It's pretty much a Welsh rugby politics free zone this week after the wall-to-wall coverage of Dave Redding picking up the mantle left by former Cardiff chairman Alan Jones and producing a 90-slide PowerPoint presentation on the future of Welsh rugby. Instead, the focus for us will be on actual rugby, whether it's the start of a new era or the last dance for Cardiff. The 2025-26 season is around the corner. We'll be looking at the squad position by position. What are the storylines to watch, players who will make the biggest impact, and what constitutes a successful season for Matt Sherratt's men?
You're listening to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Joining me on the panel this week to look ahead to that new season, we've got Andrew Ford. Fordy, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks, mate.
Good stuff. And making his season debut back after an extended paternity leave summer, Frazier Stroud. How is dad life, Fraser, and how are you?
Yes, it's pretty. It's fun, but yeah, absolutely knackered. And I think I've been a bit out of the loop, so I'm trying to get my head back in the game of Welsh rugby. So yeah, not bad.
Yeah, nice break to talk about Welsh rugby instead of the incessant sleep schedule and nappy change routine chat that you just had.
Good distraction. Good distraction. I got an hour free. No one can complain about it.
Good stuff. Well, I mean, there's been plenty to catch up on, certainly, and there'll be plenty of time to get through that. We're going to start, though, with a couple of news bits that have come out of the Arms Park in the last couple of weeks. Cardiff have announced that Saul Nelson has joined the club as an academy coach. He's from North Wales originally, but ended up schooling in Cardiff at Cardiff High. Played 2 games for Cardiff in the 98-99 Rebel season before going on to play for Bristol, Exeter and London Welsh, as well as representing Wales at every age grade up to Wales A, but never quite making a full cap. He's coached in a few places after retiring from playing Filton College with the WRU and was at RGC, but he's been seconded from there to our academy, where he'll be looking after some of the Type 5 guys, and I suspect particularly focusing on the youngsters scrummaging. Highly rated coach by all accounts, so that's a good move. And then the other piece of news, the Rags have made a signing. Back rower Ben Fry has joined for this season. He's a Cardiff boy, went to Radicomp and was a former Jewish Shield Cardiff Schools captain. Ended up going to Hartbury, I think, and then ended up in the Dragons pathway. Played 37 times for them between 2018 and 2023. Had a short stint with Merthyr. A season in the USA MLR with Dallas Jackals, and then called time on his professional career. Had a year off last year, became an estate agent in Bristol, but is now back working in Cardiff and playing for his local club. So it's good that Cardiff were a bit low on back rowers in the SRC, so it's good to see him back. One to keep an eye on at that level. I suspect he'll be a pretty good signing. Right, that's all the news. We shall now get into squad preview stuff. We're gonna, in the first part of the pod, we're gonna go through position by position, just looking at individuals and who we're expecting to kick on in this new season. We're gonna start with loose head. We've got quite a stacked loose head crop this season. So Corey Zomachowski, Ed Byrne, Danny Southworth and Rhys Barrett are still at the club. Then we've added Johan Emmanuel on loan from Bath, and Cam Tyler Grocott is in the senior academy. Fordy, I'll come to you first. My first question with these, with the loose heads, was around Corey Domachowski and a little bit about Danny Southworth. Those guys kind of finished last season as our like top two loose heads and in pretty good form, but neither were involved in Wales's summer tour. What do you think they have to do to kick on and get into what is a similarly stacked Wales loosehead ranks at the moment?
Yeah, I think Southworth really impressed me last season. He kind of signed him essentially as a Rhys Carey replacement, and it's not like for like, but he's done a good job of kind of imitating the Carey way with some of his carries over the gain line. I think he didn't play too much for Exeter, I don't believe, before joining Cardiff, but he's really impressed me. So I think if he just carries on playing the way he is, he can definitely push his way into potential Wales honours. And yeah, with Domachowski, I think it's just when he burst on the scene for Wales, that is, he was kind of on fire. And I don't know if that was all the crisis in the WRU, especially with the contracts. And he was out of contract at that point. So maybe that kind of fired his performances up. And I don't know, maybe with the whole mess that we're in now, maybe we could see him fire himself up again. So he's quality operator. I think, yeah, it's again, like you said, it's pretty stacked, the Welsh loosehead option. So I think he's got a good chance of having a stab at getting back in.
Fraser, similar question to you if you want to cover either of those two a bit more. And then the other name that jumps out for me on that list is Rhys Barrett, who looked really good in his couple of appearances kind of in the middle of last season before picking up an injury. How important is it to continue to make an effort to give him game time across this season, despite the senior guys who are ahead of him?
I think Rhys Barrett really impressed because he, I don't know if it was a plan for him to get some games last season or it was just injury that kind of resulted in it. But he came in and he looked solid, well, better than solid. He was really, really impressive, and it was a real shame he got injured towards the end of the season. So I think that kind of held us back a bit, but because he was genuinely very impressive, and I'd like to see him get more game time this year. Obviously, I guess managing him, he's still young, and then Domachowski and Southworth are really solid. I mean, Southworth I think he was a bit of the surprise of the season. Didn't really expect much from him, and he was again surprisingly solid, reliable. I think he maybe needs another season to show that before maybe pushing for Wales place. I think Domachowski's got got more to him, maybe more potential to reach, and he's already kind of there or thereabouts. So I could see Domachowski get back in the Wales squad pretty soon, really. Obviously, depending on his performances. But yeah, I'm excited to see how Rhys Barrett goes. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he's not reached it yet. So yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong loosehead crop. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Ed Byrne as well. Something like the forgotten man of Cardiff rugby, really. Like we signed him, and it was part of this drive of getting experienced guys from good setups coming in from Leinster, and then got injured, and no one. He just keep getting injured. Like the timescale, it was always mid-term, but it was never ended up short-term. And I don't think I've seen him in really any of the coverage in pre-season either. The videos the club have put out, he's not been obviously training with the first team. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on, especially in the context of if there is going to be a massive cull of overseas players the following season then as well. Is it even worth giving him too much game time if he's going to be off then the following year? Do you kind of hedge your bets and bet on Rhys Barrett, etc.? But yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Moving on to hooker, slightly fewer names in this list, certainly, with Liam Belcher, Evan Lloyd and David Hughes after Evan Daniel departed over the summer. No senior academy hooker at the moment either, with Tom Howe still a couple of years off that yet. Fraser, I mean, obviously we're a bit short there. I wonder though, just looking at that top two of Belcher and Lloyd, as good as Belcher has been as captain and his form and getting into the Wales squad over the summer, will there come a point where we sort of look to Evan Lloyd to say it's time that you try and jump above Belcher now if you're going to be a long-term option at hooker for us?
I do think. I mean, I think I really rate Evan Lloyd as a player, and I think he's got that physicality you can't train there's nothing you can do to get that kind of impact he has when he carries, and I think he's just another level. It's like those players like Derry Lakes are similar, just that physicality that's just inbuilt. And I think he played some amazing games last season. I think he was getting better as well as he played. So I think this could be like a real big season for Evan Lloyd to kind of transition into that first choice, to be a situation where it's like you can't not play him if you've got him because he's too good to not put on the pitch. Obviously, Liam Belcher, brilliant stalwart for the club, and will probably start a lot of games, especially with his leadership points about him as well. So I think it might be a bit of a more of a transition season, but I can see Evan Lloyd definitely taking that mantle, and I think, yeah, he's got a lot more to give, and he's going to get better. I'm quite excited about where Evan Lloyd can get to, really, and I can see him, pushing on the door of Wales squad again in the future, not too distant future as well.
Yeah, certainly got a very high ceiling. 40 with the hookers, and obviously we've only got 3 at the moment. There does seem though like quite a lot of talented-ish guys out there in terms of Welsh rugby at the moment. You look at the Wales under-20 squad from the summer just gone, and there's Harry Thomas at the Scarlets, obviously, who's like captained them and played a lot of games. But behind them, you've got Saul Hurley, who's Aberavon, is not involved in the pro game. We've got Evan Wood, who I think is at Pontypool this season, again not involved in the pro game. Then there might be, Cardiff had Lewis Morgan, who was with Carmarthen last season, training with them a bit. I think he appeared for the Dragons a couple of times at the back end of last season. Kirby Myhill is somebody who might be available as well, a bit more experienced, with Miami Sharks looking like they're going to fold in the American League. Like, it seems like they're going to wait and just try and hold on with the 3 hookers. But is it not a better idea just to get somebody in now and get them involved in the squad?
Yeah, you'd hope so. I think if there's an injury at some point, then we're in massive trouble. And I think as well, you need a kind of covering hooker anyway on a match day. So that means those 3 hookers are going to be kind of on duty, need to be fit all season, which is a big ask. I think Dav Hughes in particular is a really solid third choice. Like a lot of my friends who are Scarlets fans they can't believe Dav Hughes just appeared at Cardiff, because it did kind of come out of nowhere. But like, they really rate him, so it's kind of a nice little competition we've got there at hooker. I do think it is kind of established with Evan Lloyd and Liam Belcher as your first 2, but Dav Hughes certainly could knock on the door to an extent. But yeah, I think the Kirby Myhill suggestion is definitely interesting, because I imagine someone like him, if he was to come back to Wales, I don't know, maybe he's enjoying the life out in Miami. I'm sure I would. But it'd be nice to get him a run of games as well with the Rags, and he can fill in, and he's got that experience as well. So yeah, I definitely think we need a 4th hooker to some extent, because it'd be a bit of a disaster just going with 3 all season, especially if you see Evan Lloyd get called up by Wales, and even Belcher could be knocking on the door for Wales as well. There's a bit of a disaster waiting to happen there.
Yeah, Miami back to Buryport and then travelling to Cardiff for the training. That's a shock to the system, I imagine, after a few years over there. Moving on to tight head then. This is where we've got quite a few new faces this year. So Kieran Azarati and Will Davis-King still at the club, but then we've got Javan Sebastian, who's arrived from Edinburgh, and Sam Wainwright from the Scarlets. There's also Joe Cowell still in the senior academy, former Cardiff Met captain, although I did notice that the club were doing a contested training session with the Dragons up at Monmouth School the other day, and it looked to me like Joe Cowell was back packing down on the loosehead side, where he played the majority of his rugby. Now, it was only in his last year at Cardiff Met that he switched across to the tight head side, so maybe they're just seeing him as a genuine both side option, or whether he's going to revert back to loosehead now that we signed 2 senior tight heads. Remains to be seen. But 40 on the tight heads, obviously the 2 new guys coming in, Sebastian and Wainwright. Do we think either of them can genuinely push Kieran Azarati for that first choice spot in the squad?
I'm not completely sure. I think Azarati's got it nailed down. I think you'd be more likely to see Javan Sebastian make a push for it. Obviously a Scotland international, but I do think, touching on the whole hooker thing as well, and I guess the front row in general, I do wonder with certain games next season whether there'll be much value of, like, if you had a start in front row of Danny Southworth, Evan Lloyd, and Javan Sebastian. It's quite a big front row, a lot of physicality, and then you can bring the front row off the bench to kind of close the game out. Obviously, again, depends on who you're playing against. That can be quite a good tactic to have going forward. I guess the Cardiff bomb squad almost. But yeah, I think Sebastian probably have a push, but I imagine Sam Wainwright will want to prove some people wrong, because especially after getting that first couple of caps in Wales a few years ago, I'm sure he'd be hungry for more. So it's definitely healthy competition, but yeah, I think Azarati's got that number 3 shirt nailed down.
Yeah, Fraser, there's a couple of guys there, I think, with Wainwright, who hasn't really had much of a dig at the Scarlets, and then Will Davis-King, who's still at the club with us, but hasn't had a massive run of games or particularly like nailed down any sort of spot in the 23. Is that tight head is always a position that we're talking about, that we'd like to like add a huge South African or something. Does that feel like a bit of a risk for Cardiff going into the season in a crucial position with guys who like are quite unproven to a degree?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a risk. I mean, because Javan Sebastian, Sam Wainwright, aren't heralded in Wales as the best of the best. They're solid. Or Javan Sebastian's solid enough. Sam Wainwright, shown potential. Did he get like a penalty against South Africa in his first test? And I was like, whoa, he's fucking amazing. And then since then, I don't know if he's done much. But then Will Davis-King, I think he's still not, based on his size and physicality, we expect a lot more from him, and he's still not delivered that. And it's like, how long do you wait? But I guess the positive is there's more, we have more numbers there. So I guess you've got more chance to mix and match. And if something's not working, you can change it the next week. Whereas last season, it felt like we were a bit tighter in numbers there. And we were relying on Reece Litterick massively to just, play 80 minutes at a time. Like, it was just mad. And it's a real shame. Big loss, he's gone. But hopefully, I think Javan and Sebastian, Sam Wainwright, maybe them together equal a Reece Litterick. I don't know, but it's a bit of a risk. But I think give them a chance to kind of prove themselves and see what they can do, and ease into the squad. And then you've got Azarati. I agree with Fordy. He's the nailed on. That would be the starter. It'd probably be away with Wales quite a lot, but yeah,
it'd be interesting to see how much he's away with Wales and stuff as well, because I think for us, he's been pretty solid over the last probably 2-3 years. Azarati, never been a case of any of us really questioning whether it's him starting or not. If he's fit, he's been starting for us in our team selections each week. But he still seems to be, with some Welsh fans then who aren't Cardiff fans, they're still not convinced by him, I think, at a test level, and not like we haven't got a massive depth at tight end in Wales, certainly, but there does seem to be constant calls for different. It's always whoever's starting isn't the one that is called for, it's somebody else, and then they come in, and then the person who's just gone is the one who's called for again. But hopefully he can convert the sort of consistency of his Cardiff form into consistency of test performances this year, and really nail down his spot in the Wales Matchday 23, along with guys like Archie Griffin, and I think Henry Thomas will be there or thereabouts again if he continues playing well with the Scarlets. On to second row then. Similar look with Teddy Williams, Josh McNally, Rory Thornton there. We've added George Knott from the Dragons. Tom Cottle has joined the senior academy from RGC. And then Fraser, linking to my first question then with the second rows, is that I'll list Ben Donnell amongst the second row options as well. Is that something you think he might feature there a bit more for us this season? Or is he like a genuine out-and-out lock option? Or is it still just a case that when we need him to fill in there, he might do so?
I mean, it's hard to say really, but he's performed solidly at lock. I think last season when he came in and did that, he did a really good job. I mean, impressed us more than we thought he would do. And we haven't got like a huge amount of depth in that position, so maybe they are looking at Ben Donnell to kind of be mainly a lock. But then our versatility is always crucial over a long season. Like it's a great player to have who can, now we know, can play lock and can, is obviously a good back row forward. That's like a brilliant skill to have, and we'll be relying on that, I think, because it's hard to say we're going to just try and stick with him a lock. I think injuries dictate what will happen really. But yeah, I think he's proven that he can do a job, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a few more minutes in that position, depending on injury and stuff like that.
Fordy, I guess like my slight concern with second row is sort of availability a bit this season. The likelihood is that Teddy will be with Wales a bit more after impressing in the summer, and then I'm sort of reticent to say this after the examples of like Nick Williams and Fau Felice and stuff, but like Josh McNally, like he must run out of steam at some point, surely. Like surely he can't produce another season like last season where he just kept going and going. And if that is the case, then that we lose those two, like how confident are we that we can sustain like a good quality type five over the course of the season?
It's going to be tough because I think last season we relied so heavily on Teddy and McNally that it's kind of almost alien to think of any different combination at this point for this season. But yeah, I think certainly what's inevitably going to happen is when Teddy's away, McNally's going to get called up by the RAF if he's fit at that point. So we'll be down to be just Thornton, Knott, and Donnell, I believe, at that point. So yeah, I think definitely you'd have to have Donnell being considered as a second row, and like you say, when McNally runs out of steam, which is going to happen, but he seems to be loving life at Cardiff, so maybe maybe there's a bit still a lot more in it for him. So yeah, we'll see. I'm intrigued, but yeah, I think Donnell definitely needs to be having a bit more of a go at second row, but there's still the scope to include him in the back row, and especially with the 6-2 splits we tend to go for on the bench. It's one of that flexibility of if, say, McNally and Teddy having a stormer and seem good to carry on for the full 80, then you can slot Donnell in wherever he needs to be.
Yeah, and then I think the big unknown for a lot of Cardiff fans really who is George Knott. I mean, we kind of watch the Dragons to keep an eye on Welsh rugby stuff when we can. I think the majority of us, but he's still not a player that you really know anything about, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that he just quietly gets on with his work unseen. But I think the question has like not wanting to sort of outright diss the Dragons, but the question with some players like that come across in the Dragons is, do they look better in a better team as well? And so, yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see exactly how good he is. But he looks like he's featured quite heavily in the preseason stuff this season, so he's obviously fit and slotting in well. Fingers crossed he can add something to that pack. Back row then, as ever, plenty of quality here. Tame Basham, another one who's come across from the Dragons, although slightly less of a question mark over him, as we've seen plenty of him with Wales over the years. And then he's joined by the returners, James Botham, Ben Donnell again, Alex Mann, Dan Thomas, Felipe Faletau, Alan Lawrence, Lucas De La Rua, as mentioned, I think on the pod, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, has been training a lot with the senior squad this season, this preseason so far. And then Evan Rees is also in the senior academy squad. I think he's a year younger than De La Rua, so I imagine we'll see him still with the Rags quite heavily this year. He started at 8 against St Albans the other week. 4D, the sort of the age-old question with our back row, and obviously it's very opponent dependent, but if you were just picking sort of a starting Cardiff 15 now, what would be your back row at this point of pre-season?
Yeah, I've had a decent think about it, and I think I would go for Alex Mann at 6 because I think when he was at his best last season, he was huge for us. Obviously, there's still a few question marks over his discipline, but if you can kind of utilize that in a positive way of just being that shithouse Peter O'Mahony style player, then that'll be huge going forward, especially because we sometimes crumble against bigger packs. So it'd kind of be nice for him to square up to them a bit, rattle a few cages. And then I'm very conflicted between, it's very much dependent on the team we play, but I think we'll touch on it later anyway with the centres, but I think with Basham at 7, you've got a proper kind of carrying ability there. Not exactly in the same mould as Thomas Young, but when he breaks the line, he's got the pace to kind of make quite a few yards. So I'd be more inclined to go Basham, maybe in a more physical game, both of them. And then I think if Faletau's fit, he's got to start at 8 going forward.
Yeah, I think the 8 is one that I think every Cardiff fan will agree. Probably every World Rugby fan will agree on there. If Faletau's there, you pick him at 8. Fraser, something that Andrew mentioned there about Thomas Young going. Is there a concern with the back row and maybe with the team generally that obviously outside wingers apart that we haven't got like out and out pace in that team? Are we a slightly slower team now than we were perhaps a couple of years ago?
I mean, looking at that back row, yeah, it's not. Obviously Thomas Young was had kind of freakish speed for a back rower, so that's a pretty like massive drop in terms of average speed of your forward pack if he's gone. But yeah, none of those players have like. I mean, James Bufferin's fairly nippy, like he's quite mobile, I guess. But yeah, it's not that quick. Yeah, I'd be that definitely be an area that maybe we're lacking in. But I guess solid physical presence. I mean, Alex Mann, I agree with you. 40, he had a great season last season, and against Japan, he played brilliantly, and I think is proven himself to be. I think he's getting better every time, so it's good to have him in. But yeah, it does seem like we have lacking a little bit of pace in the forward pack for sure, and that could be an issue. But I guess we'll just have to adapt to it. And there's a reason why we let Thomas Young go, I guess, or he chose to leave. I guess it depends. And yeah, we'll see how we balance out. Really, I think I had the same back row. Apart from I think I went for Botham over Basham, but it's it depends on the game, as you said, 4D.
That's going to be an interesting battle, those two as well, because there's obviously subtle differences to them. Both of them's a bit bigger and physical. Basham's a bit more like explosive in his power, I guess. But they, in terms of being like genuine 6, 7, 8 options, and even their sort of career trajectory to date in being young players, but have been around the Welsh squad a lot, but have never consistently been in that Welsh squad and that Welsh 23. They've always been in and out of it, whether that's through their own form, through their fitness, or just through the form of others jumping ahead of them. So it'd be interesting because obviously they both want to get back in the Wales squad. I've no doubt that's where they want to be every test window. And so battling each other at Cardiff first before going there, hopefully that elevates both of their games to the next level. 4D, just to finish off on the back rowers, we mentioned it at the back end of last season that Cardiff under Gethin Jenkins' defence has evolved somewhat from, we still get a lot of turnovers, don't get me wrong, but we're not like just a one-trick pony defensively now, where it's like we'll just jackal everything, and if that works, great, and if not, then we're struggling. Is it weird to go into a season without like a genuine over-the-ball, every breakdown jackal threat that we've had for the last, I don't know, I think you could go back to like Martin Williams, or like even before that, we haven't had that option. Is that a concern, or is that like just following the way rugby's going now is quite a good thing for Cardiff to be in line with that?
Yeah, it's strange. It's quite unusual, especially I remember when we had a back row at one point. It's probably like 8 or 9 seasons ago, Warburton, Navidi, and Ellis Jenkins, where it was just jackal central every 2 minutes. But yeah, I think it is probably just the way rugby's going. I remember Navidi saying on a podcast a few years ago that there was a team meeting where they basically watched the game back and were just like, we need to stop jackling because we're all going for a jackal at every ruck. But I still think there's jackal threats there. Like Josh Adams in particular is a strong jackal threat. Seen Johan Mulder over the ball. Plenty of the front five can get over the ball quite well, and you've seen with certain players like McNally, it's not your traditional jackal turnovers, but he gets a few turnovers in. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's too much of a worry. Just probably the way rugby's going. But I think you still have players like Botham, Basham, Dan Thomas that can get a jackal turnover here and there, just not kind of known as your typical like Sam Warburton or David Pocock, just jackal every single ball back rower. But yeah, not too worried about it.
Good stuff. Right, that's the forwards. And moving on to the backs then. Scrum half is pretty similar to last season, with Johan Mulder, Ali Davis and Ellis Bevan as your senior options. Jan Davis has come in on loan from Bath, and Sean Davis is in the senior academy. I think he's still under 20s eligible next year though, Sean, so he'll play for the Rags in the under 20s. Don't suspect we'll see too much of him in the first team picture. Fraser, scrum half's an interesting one with, the same guys who there was a lot of change there last season. I don't think many of us would have predicted this time last season that the sort of 9 journey would have gone the way it did throughout the course of that campaign. Who, in your mind, is the starter going into this season? What is their sort of depth chart ranking for you?
It's yeah. I think it's. I would probably go with Aled Davis as the main starter in like a big game. I think they would start. I feel that Jockey would go with him as a safe pair of hands and really solid technically and kicking wise and stuff like that. But obviously, Johan Mulder proved to us after a bit of a shaky start that he's like, yeah, he can start a game and he can run a game for us. So I think it might be a bit of like horses for courses, depends on the opponent. Out of Aled Davis and Johan Mulder. I mean, Ellis Bevan's interesting because I thought he might move on this summer. I don't know. It felt like he was kind of not really getting chances with Cardiff last season. It didn't feel like he was fancied. But I guess clearly Cardiff have faith in him, or they think he can do something and he's got the potential. I mean, he's also amazingly ripped, so maybe that's why they've kept him. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that like keeping faith in him boosts his confidence a little bit, because I think he can do. He had moments when he looked quite good and his kicking was really on point. So I think he can play well. So I'd be interested to see if he does get a few more chances on the bench, maybe coming on. But yeah, I'd probably my gut feeling would be probably Aled Davis starting and then Mulder, and then kind of they mix it up depending on the occasion and who they're playing against.
Fordy, a similar question, I suppose, about who's your first choice going into the season. Then, as Fraser mentioned, Bevan's an interesting one in that it was certainly suggested to me at the back end of last season that he would be moving on despite being contracted. And I think there was mooted moves to the Scarlets and the Dragons, which never quite came off. Rewind just over 12 months, summer 2024, he's with Wales touring Australia and playing against the Springboks and stuff, and now he's probably third. And if you look at Ian Davis coming in as somebody who would probably be thinking about getting some first team time whilst on loan from Bath as well, there's a potential that he could have dropped to fourth. What do we think he has to do to get back up that depth chart?
Yeah, it's really intriguing because I think you've got three completely different scrum halves in that squad that kind of play very different style rugby. And I think you'll see that reflected a lot next season, where there'll be certain games where, depending on the opponent, you'll have one starting ahead of the other. And I think there's definitely an argument of, I'd personally disagree with Fraser in the aspect of, I think Aled Davis, more so the back end of the season, will be really useful coming off the bench, because he's that kind of conservative type scrum half that if it's anything like last season, where towards the end of the kind of league season, every game was essentially a knockout game, he's kind of that perfect player to come on to just shore things up, just boot the leather off the ball. And then there's that option of alternating between kind of Bevan or Mulder as a starting option. But we've got Lions first up, so by tradition, Johan Mulder has to start that game. So, but yeah, I'm very conflicted on who should be the starting nine. And like I said, there's quality in all three players. So regardless of who starts as the season goes on, I'm not going to hold too much of a grudge saying one or the other should be there.
Yeah, Bevan's an interesting one. I've been a fan of him for a while when he was at the 20s and Cardiff Met and stuff. And I think we've said it before, but we didn't handle the first part of his development particularly well, I don't think, where it was just Lloyd and Thomas playing every week while they were still at the club and not giving him quite enough game time. And then all of a sudden he was starting and in the Wales squad, and that was a very quick trajectory. So he's definitely got something about him, left foot kicker, big physical guy. And just like to see him when he's given a chance next, just really take the shackles off and play freely. It looked at times that maybe he was overthinking things a little bit from the base and not getting the ball moving as quickly as he could. But I think there's an interesting debate, and both make excellent points there. I think the good thing is that we do have very good nine options there, and it is just down to Jockey picking the right one at the right time, certainly. But yeah, I suspect if you did a poll of all the Cardiff fans, you get some very different responses on who each person saw as like your first choice, second choice, third choice. Fly half, then, one that it's an interesting one, fly half, in that you probably wouldn't get too many people not picking Sheedy now that Tina Stabia is gone, as I think Sheedy is pretty much nailed on as that 10. But Fordy, like, he's still somebody who does divide opinion, even though he probably would be accepted by most now that De Beer's moved on as the starting 10. My question that I sent out before this was sort of like, is it just his goal kicking that is an issue when it's in terms of in people's minds of him being a really good 10? And is that what he needs to fix to push for Wales selection as well, or is there more to his game that maybe he needs to pick up on as well going into this season?
I think there's probably a little bit more to his game that he could improve on. I think I really like the way he kind of runs to the line, and when he gets that kind of pop pass going, especially on front foot ball, it's when I think that was the difference in us performing better in the league last season, was that kind of threat he had. Some of the assists he had last season, the lead up to tries, were superb. I think sometimes when he gets caught, it's a bit of a worry. If someone reads him quite well, then we then just end up on the back foot for the next few phases and just kick the ball away, which is obviously completely normal. It happens to every team. But yeah, I do worry a bit about his kicking, but I think I've mentioned it plenty of times on the pod that I do think going forward it should be Ben Thomas as the main kicker. But it'd be interesting to see if over pre-season, if he's just been working so hard on that kicking, if that makes any kind of impact, because there's times where his kicking was pretty solid anyway, especially kind of in open play, but he just had the occasional kick to touch or kick at goal where you're thinking, why isn't Ben Thomas taking that? So yeah, I'm interested to see how he develops, but I think there's an argument that if he can improve his kicking, he should be in Wales contention to some degree.
Fraser, we had a question from Reese on Twitter, who says he's intrigued to see the 10 battles. Sheedy's obviously the favourite of Sherritt, played a lot and done a good job, but where will Ioan Lloyd play? Has he been signed to be the utility back? Or could we invent the 3-10s backline with Sheedy, Ben Thomas and Ioan Lloyd, as unlikely as that is? Like, what are your thoughts on Lloyd coming in and where you expect to see him this season mostly?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I was going through the team and like putting people in positions as where I think they'll be. I have put Ioan Lloyd as in the fly half category because we don't have many. Like I don't know, correct me if I'm honest. Sheedy, Harry Wild, I guess, is kind of in the background there, and Ben Thomas is the 12 who can cover 10. But I think Jockey wants him playing 12. That's like where he's best suited, I think. So I think Ioan Lloyd, I think they might be looking at him as a fly half option, especially if you consider his kicking percentage last season in the Scarlets. I know he wasn't roundly popular there, but like off the tee, he was brilliant, like really accurate, got a good percentage over the season. And that is obviously something that Sheedy lacks massively. Like his percentage of kicking is really quite poor with penalties and conversions. So if having Ioan Lloyd, I don't know, sharing the jersey and like knowing that you've kind of got you bagging 3 points when you get penalties could be pretty massive for us and could push us a bit further up the table. So I can see Ioan Lloyd be considered as a fly half, and I don't know if it's all about if Ioan Lloyd can like keep a lid on his like batshit nature and learn a bit from Sheedy and like time the passes well and like make those decisions, because like for what he said is like Callum Sheedy's like pop passing at the right time and then just setting people into space. If Ioan Lloyd can get a bit of that going, then I think it might be a bit more of a competition, and that Sheedy might not be as nailed on as maybe we think. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that will be an interesting one to see how that develops over the course of the season. Moving on to centres then. Fordy, I think we mentioned this, the outside centre on the first part of the season. So I'll come to Fraser with a touch on the 13 jersey, which we all know is a bit bare at the moment. I think it's likely that Grady starts the season as the first choice 13. But my question then, Fraser, is do we trust Harry Millard as the genuine backup? Like if Grady is injured or away with Wales squad, is Millard a genuine 13 contender, not just for the couple of games that he did there at the start of last season, but going into the season as the backup 13?
I mean, it looks like on paper that is what they're doing, right? 'Cause, like I'm looking around the rest of the team, and there isn't anyone really who can step in that I would trust. And I think Harry Millard did show that he has got the capability of playing 13. Really, I know it was only a couple of games, but he was a lot better than I thought. I think I had a lot more concern and worry as to like the defensive solidity he has, and like whether there'd be more that other teams would exploit that. But he did seem to keep a lid on things defensively. He was quite physical as well. I was quite impressed by his tackling. He's got quite like a heavy tackle on him, so it's like he impressed in that way. Um, so I think Cardiff probably are leaning towards Harry Millard shifting properly to 13, especially if you have like Cabango and Stevens back from injury. Like Bowen might be playing more of a part, so it might be less of a chance of Harry Millard playing on the wing. So maybe they are like just fully committing to that because it doesn't look like they're signing a 13 anytime soon. So yeah, I guess that's what they set on. And bit worrying, like that, there's not much depth there. We know, like, but he has semi proven himself. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And what can we do otherwise, really?
40. My question then about the backline genuinely a little bit, but with a focus on the centre there as well, is that obviously Grady's a big man, big physical man. Ben Thomas has shown, he's improving his level of physicality through his carrying, but sort of outside that, with Lilo now gone, we don't, there's not a huge amount of that like explosive power there. Millard is very much a small, quick guy. We've got a lot, as Fraser listed a few there, we've got a lot of smaller, quick wingers. Cam Winnett is he packs a good punch for a guy his size, but is a smaller guy as well. Is there a possibility that, particularly if I can't remember what the fixtures are, but we'll almost certainly end up in like sort of some dreadful weather somewhere in February and on a boggy pitch, that we're just like Cardiff are liable just to get run over by somebody turning up with quite a big physical direct backline?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at some of the other teams, just thinking off the top of my head, like if we're playing the Sharks and you've got someone like Esther Hazen running straight down our channel from a line out or a scrum, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble given the size of some of our backline players. I agree that Ben Thomas's physicality is certainly getting better. There's some games where he seems to carry like a prime Jamie Roberts, but then the next game it almost just reverts back to his normal game. But yeah, I think the Cardiff way's always kind of been a bit more kind of flair rather than trying to go for these punchy carries, which is why I think I mentioned someone like Basham earlier. Of if he's carrying and if you kind of potentially even have him more geared towards the kind of centre area in defence, then you've got that element of physicality there. But yeah, even though there's certainly a lack of physicality, I do think the boys in the back do punch above their weight massively. So not too much of a worry in kind of at the moment. But yeah, like you said, as soon as a certain game where it's horrible weather or you've got like an Esther Hazen playing, then maybe I'll change my tune at that point.
Yeah, flashbacks of Tuipulotu just running us over multiple times against Glasgow last year. I think that for me, the interesting thing in the centre will be when Ben Thomas is either away with Wales or if he's picked up a knock, who the backup 12 is as well. Obviously, we've re-signed Rory Jennings, which I think was a little bit of a surprise. He was quite heavily linked with heading across to Worcester at one point and joining their new project there. And as a non-Welsh qualified player, whether we needed to be retaining somebody as a squad player taking up a non-Welsh qualified spot. But it'd be interesting to see whether Jennings is being kept as quite he's a good guy around the place by all accounts, and is maybe happy to not be the starter and just play when he wants, or whether they are thinking Stefan Manuel is genuinely ready to step up. But it seems to me that he's completed the under-20s. He pretty much already seems too good for Super Rugby Cymru, to be honest. It was a bit like when Ben Thomas was watching him play there, and you're like, he's just finding this quite easy, it seems, to play this level. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how far off they think he is, and whether he goes on to maybe a bit of an S&C program and bulks up a little bit before they make that move. But that'll be one to keep an eye on. Back three then, Fraser. You mentioned those couple of wingers there. If I just list everybody who comes under the back three on my list: Josh Adams, Put Harry Millard still there as a wing option. Then you've got Theo Cabango, Ewan Stevens, Cam Winnett, and Jacob Beetham as the fullbacks. And then there's Tom Bowen and Matty Young in the senior academy. Ollie Das is also in the senior academy, but I suspect I think he played with Cardiff Uni last season. He'll mostly be with the Rags this season by the looks. But yeah, there's not like much in the way of that big right winger that Jockey has come on the pod and said that he likes before outside of Adams. Is it time to shift that attacking approach a little bit and just properly embrace the fact that we've got these multiple very good, very small, very quick wingers, and to like properly go all out, balls to the wall pace and run teams off the park?
Oh, fuck it, why not? I mean, it's so exciting. I mean, yeah, Bowen, Cabango, Stevens, they're three fucking electric players, aren't they? And like so fun to watch. Like Bowen last season was great to see him play, and he's just a box of tricks. Cabango obviously was injured, but he can do that. So can Stevens. So like it would be. I mean, we've got those players. We don't really have many other don't have that physical right wing as you mentioned, apart from Adams. I mean, like Jacob Beefin as a fullback is fairly big, but like apart from that, like on the wings, yeah, I think obviously Josh Adams will probably play every time he's available because he's brilliant. So they will focus mainly on having him there, and then I guess rotate on the left wing to give those little guys opportunities. But I think we'll have to just go for the run teams off the park. Like what he says, Cardiff way a little bit, just like a bit of flair. We don't have the biggest players, so we can't rely on that style. So we got to maybe adapt and just throw it about a bit more. And with those players, they can create something from nothing. And I'm excited to see Cabango and Stevens back, and Bowen given the chance to keep developing and showcase his skills on like a few more games in the URC would be quite exciting to see.
40, somebody we've mentioned quite a lot on the pod, and a message from Ben on Twitter as well, who said Beetham I feel needs a big season, has been hit by injuries, but Sherratt needs to give him a fair shot. Is there a concern at this point almost with Beetham after he's missed the year with the ACL and then picked up not coming back? I think he was away at Connacht in one of our 4,000 games against them last season. That if he doesn't sort of string together a lot of games and an injury-free run now, that he might actually not realise his potential?
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. I'm not too sure how old he is. Is he 22, 23?
I had 24 in my mind. But,
24, right?
Yeah, that I might have just made that up. He turned 24 in April. So.
Okay, so he's still got plenty of time, but yeah, I guess this season could kind of be make or break. He's kind of pinned his colours to the mast by getting Wales caps now, so there's not that kind of risk of. I think Gregor Townsend was sniffing around a couple of years ago. So I imagine we'll see him kind of stay put. But yeah, he needs kind of a big season. But it's such a difficult dynamic to balance with Cam Winnett at fullback. Of Cam's just always been so solid. And I'm happy to say, like Beetham, every time I've seen him play, he's always looked quite composed. And even though the amount of games due to injuries he's played isn't a huge amount, he's always put in a solid shift and never looked too out of place at this level. And obviously, there's plenty of arguments that he should be playing centre or something. So it'd be intriguing to see with kind of that little hole at 13, especially if you have someone like Mason Grady called up for Wales, whether around the international games, whether Beetham might be given a chance at centre. But yeah, I'm expecting a big season, but it's such a difficult dynamic to balance of where you play him. You can't exactly drop Cam Winnett. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think that's. I know we all hope that he does make it into the team and becomes like a genuine utility option. Would be great, even if he does focus on fullback a bit more. But yeah, I think everyone's just got fingers crossed for a couple of the guys in the back three, the likes of Beetham, Cabango as well. Just to have an injury-free season would be just a massive win in itself. I feel like for Cardiff and for them personally at this point. And then hopefully, Ewan Stevens bounces back. I don't think he's had much in the way of injuries in his career so far, but ACL is always a difficult one, and hopefully he's not too knocked back by that, because certainly his pace is his main asset there, and particularly his acceleration really over that first 5-10 yards, the way you can just go from standing to sprinting is quite incredible. But yeah, lots of good options, but yeah, lots of concerns a little bit as well about back three, just how they get balanced and who stays injury free. To round up then, going through the squad, just some general questions. Fraser, come to you with them first. It's not so much a prediction of who they will be, but who do you think needs to win these for Cardiff to have a good season? Who would be the most important player or the player of the season, and who would be the surprise package or breakthrough player?
I mean, it's weird. I know we touched on like 13. I guess if Harry Millard is being put into that role, I guess that's pretty important player for him to continue to reach to kind of live up to that. I mean, I guess Mason Grady's the main shout there. But I mean, I guess Azarati, kind of, he's always solid, but he's even more so with Reece Litterick not about. He's gonna kind of taking a lot more on himself. Kind of, you got with his backups, Javon and Sam. And then, but I think the surprise package, I think Johan Lloyd's going to play more of a part than we think, and I think it might be at 10. I don't know. I've always liked him. I know he has shown himself to be batshit, but the potential he had, and when he came from Bristol, I just got excited about him. And I don't know. I think if he can hit that maturity and just like control himself a little bit more in terms of the playing, I think he's got so much potential to do well, and his kicking could be the difference maker for us. So I think he'd be he's my shout of the surprise package of the season, I guess, Johan Lloyd. But and I think I'd stick with having Azza as probably one of the most important, staying fit. And we'll see if he goes to Wales and such. But I think him at tight head is crucial.
Two good shouts, 40. Same two to you.
Yeah, so I was thinking with like most important player, because as we've already discussed, kind of the scrum half shirt, you have 3 different quality scrum halves there. If one of them does manage to kind of make that 9 shirt their own, it's going to obviously show that they are having a stormer of a season. So that would be quite crucial. If someone makes that scrum half shirt their own, then they could be huge going forward. But I think someone like Teddy would probably be our most important player. I think he's been hugely solid, and the way we've seen him kind of grow, and wasn't surprised to see him play quite well for Wales once he finally got a start. I'm sure he'll carry that on to next season. And surprise package, I echo Frazier's thoughts of, I think with the 6-2 split on the bench we tend to go for, it gives you that flexibility of, if someone goes down injured with Johan Lloyd on the bench in the back line, he could theoretically cover any position, bar 9 obviously. But I reckon he'd give it a good go if he played 9 as well. But I think, I think he'll be huge. And if a game's in the balance, there's not many other players you'd want kind of running at a tired defence. Someone like Johan is quite electric as well. And no matter what position he's in, I'm sure he could run riot.
Good stuff. I shall chuck mine out there as well. I think I'm going to put most important player, who I'd really like to be the most important player and who could have a real breakout season, as Mason Grady this year. I think the potential's been there for a long time. The promise has been there. There's been a question mark over winger or centre, but I just love it if he just nailed down that 13 jersey, and by the end of the season we were like, yeah, this guy is the guy. He's in the Wales squad. He's playing 13 there. We don't even have to think about it. Once again, in the 13 jersey at Cardiff, having put Lilo there for so long, and now we just put Grady there automatically. So I'd absolutely love it if he properly had that season where, he's now the man, and he just embraced that title. And then my surprise package, for no reason at all. I said earlier that I don't really know anything about him, but I've managed to convince myself that George Nott's going to be amazing. Like, over the course of this podcast, I've just been sitting here thinking about that he's just going to be a class player, and that McNally's going to call it a day at the end of next season. Then we'll be like, it's fine, George Nott will just start, and that'll be fine. So that's what I'm going for that one. Good stuff. That's the squad sorted anyway, and our first part of the season preview pod. I'm going to take a second to say that if you're enjoying what you're listening to, or if you're watching us on YouTube, do feel free to Like the video and subscribe to the Rap channel, or like the podcast and subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Feel free to drop us particularly a 5-star review as well, and leave a comment. There's plenty of other podcasts as part of the Rap family, and the second channel now covering stuff outside of Wales, the Global Game Line channel, particularly the Welsh, the Women's Rugby Treehouse, as they call themselves, pumping out plenty of content during the Rugby World Cup, which started last weekend. We won't dedicate too much time to Wales's performance, as we mentioned off air. Fordy turned it off, and I certainly wasn't paying too much attention when Scotland literally started running away with it, as they had so much pace in their back line. The disappointing one to start for Sean Lynn's side, but they're back in action on Saturday lunchtime against Canada in what might be a damage control exercise against one of the best sides in the world, unfortunately. Hopefully they can go the week after and pick up a win against Fiji to round off the tournament. But yeah, I think there's a main wrap coming out at some point as well, looking at Dave Reddin's multi-slide PowerPoint. They're probably still reading it, I imagine. That's why it hasn't come out yet. They're on slide 10. It's taken that long to get through it. But yeah, they'll be looking at the options put forward and the optimal solutions, etc. So do tune into that when that comes out as well. Quick Rags Corner / Pathway stuff. The under-18s have been in action the last 2 weeks. They start their under-18 Rag campaign with a win against the Dragons, 45-35 at the Arms Park, and then made a bunch of changes, backed that up against the Ospreys at Neath on the weekend, where they were 22-63 winners in a fairly comprehensive scoreline. Josh Turnbull's side continue this weekend. They're hosting RGC at the Arms Park on Sunday afternoon, and that's part of the season ticket if you've got a season ticket for this year. So do get down and watch the Next Generation. Imagine there'll be a few changes again as they rotate through their wider squad, but plenty of talent there, and good to see the Next Generation kicking on. And then for the Rags, mentioned Ben Fry signing earlier. He might well be in action this weekend as the Rags finish their pre-season campaign. They're hosting Esher, who I believe are in National 2 over in England. That's at the Arms Park at 3 o'clock. I don't know if it's included in the season ticket pre-season or if it's all pay, but having chucked a load of youngsters out against St Albans the other week, I suspect we'll see a few more regular faces from the semi-professional squad come involved in that one. It's also part of a double header, so after the Rags game at 3 p.m. at 5:30, there's a game to remember Lieutenant Rodri Lyshon, who sadly lost his life in a training exercise with the Royal Navy last year. The Rod Lyshon Select 15 are playing Cowbridge. I think that's his home club. That's a 5:30 p.m. kickoff, so do get along to watch that one as well. I'm sure they'll be raising some money and remembering Lieutenant Rodri Lyshon. So we're onto the second part of and final part of the season preview bits of the podcast, looking ahead to just sort of the season generally. We'll start with the overall question. I think Fraser, come to you first on this one. We had a few different responses to this question online of what constitutes a successful season. There was Rob on Twitter who said just winning our home games and retaining the Welsh Shield would be good with the circumstances around the squad at the moment. That kicking on might be tough. But then Nathan said that he'd like to see us in the top 8 and reaching the semi-final of the Challenge Cup. So a couple of different opinions there. Fraser, what to you constitutes a successful 2025-26 season for Cardiff?
I think I'd be leaning towards agreeing with like playoffs and maybe semis of the Challenge Cup. That's the kind of direction I'm going in. Because I know we've lost a few players, but our team, we've kind of bolstered in some areas. Our backlines look, we got a exciting backline. We did well last season, but you got to believe in progress and building on it. We had, Jockey had his time in Wales. He got his win for Japan, against Japan, not for him, which is obviously, that must be a good experience for him. It's only going to develop him as a coach. I think we've retained some players that I thought might have left, like Bevan and Rory Jennings. We can question the quality of them maybe, but at least it's continuity and a team environment and kind of like cohesion. So we've got some returning injuries like Cabango and Ewan Stevens like coming back in. So I'd like to think that we can kind of move a little bit forward. I think getting into the playoffs, like top 8, I think we can do it, and I'd like to have that as the expectation. And I'd like to think that's what Cardiff's are thinking as a team. And then obviously European competition is a bit more. It's harder to judge how well you can do in it. I know we've got a few tough fixtures in our group, but again, aiming for that semi-final, I think we can do it. We've got the quality, and I guess it's just injury dependent. Will dictate how much we put into kind of the European competition or not, I think. But yeah, I think that's I agree with that, Lesnar. Playoffs and semi-finals is possible. That's what I'd hope for this season. Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we'll look back on it, but yeah.
40.
Yeah, my view is, I think if it'd be great to like build on what we did last season, but I think realistically, I'd see it as a successful season if we kind of had the same results. Obviously, I'd still be gutted to miss out on the playoffs, but as long as we didn't kind of regress on what we built last season, I'd see it as a successful season, given that everything that's kind of going on behind the scenes, obviously a lot of that happened last season as well, that I definitely regard that as a successful season, even if we were to finish 9th, which is probably a little bit of a negative viewpoint. But I think, again, it's just making sure we kind of don't fall back to kind of the team from a couple of seasons ago that was getting battered quite routinely by some teams. With a Challenge Cup, it'd be brilliant to make the final, especially with it being in Bilbao again. But it's a very tough group. So I just hope we don't kind of neglect some of the group stage games like we did last season, so that if we do get through, that we don't have that kind of what if where we end up like away to a team like Connacht again with a kind of horrible route to the final.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the league and Europe balance, and I think we mentioned it on the pod a few times at the back end of last season, but the general feeling was we did get it wrong last year, like how we tried to, well, I don't know if we actually tried to prioritize either, ended up prioritizing neither, really, it felt like, to a degree. Fraser, I guess, let's go a bit worst case scenario and say, if we get to that start of December point and it hasn't gone well in the first few rounds of the season, would we as supporters sort of accept just saying, right, let's bin the league and go all in on Europe and play our strongest teams there, even if that was sort of at the neglect of like the Christmas derbies? And then I suppose there is a vice versa then as well, that if it's gone really well and we're unbeaten by the start of December, do we just say, actually, we'll bin Euros and concentrate on the league? Or as Cardiff, and we're paying money to watch all of the games and stuff, do we expect us to try and win all the competitions that we're in?
It's a delicate balance that, but I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Last season, it did seem like we kind of just, didn't focus enough on the Challenge Cup when we had the opportunity was there to get some victories. There was a couple of games in the group stages against, I think, French opposition where we were like, we should have won those games, and it was because we maybe hadn't had the right subs on the bench that meant that we weren't able to kind of finish the game off, and it did feel like we were lacking there. It's easier said than done. I mean, I'd like to see a perfect fine balance between the two. I wouldn't want to neglect the league too much, like in terms of like the Christmas derbies. I would much prefer us to focus on those because they're just like the tradition behind them, and I just feel it's just important it's a good start to the new year to get some victories there, and it can, if we had a poor season up until that point, those Christmas derbies could really turn it around. They're winnable games against the other Welsh teams, and we do well against them generally speaking. So that could be like get a few victories there, and we go into January, February, the rest of the fixtures, and we're on a bit more of a high, even if that means the in between matches or like the matches leading up to it in the Challenge Cup we don't prioritize. And yeah, there's some tough group games we've got in the Challenge Cup, which I would understand to a degree if we held back some players. I think we're playing Exeter away, aren't we, as one of them. I mean, Racing at home, I'd love a victory there. I mean, that's a big event, and why not go for it? But yeah, it is really tricky, and it just depends on injuries. I hate to be like sitting on the fence about this, but like it really depends on how our injury situation is going, as to whether we can risk certain players at certain times, or not. So yeah, a bit of an iffy, not really like concrete answer either way, but that's my thoughts on it.
Fordy, I don't know if you've got a viewpoint on it, and also give us your away trip of the season, the one that you've circled as well. I know you like an away trip. Where are you heading off to?
So the away trip I've circled at the moment is Glasgow away, which is in May. So it's a long way away, but hopefully there'll be some semi-decent weather at that point to make it a better weekend. But I think I was looking at the fixtures, and obviously I don't think we should neglect the group stage in the Challenge Cup. But I think it's one of those things of, if we somehow don't get out of our group, it's the South Africa tours just immediately after the Six Nations, and then it's the Challenge Cup knockout games. And if we're doing well in the league, it might be one of those blessings in disguise that we can go to South Africa, go for it, try and get 2 victories, and then that they've got, 3 weeks off then of no rugby, and kind of obviously that can come back to bite you, having not played for some time. But also, if the shoe's on the other foot, if we're stinking up the league and we've got to the knockout stages of the Challenge Cup, it means we can take a bit of a breather on that South Africa tour and then go all out for the Challenge Cup knockout games. So it's a difficult thing to balance, but I'm kind of indifferent on it either way, essentially.
Glasgow, a good trip. 2018-19, we played them in the Heineken Cup, I think, as it probably was then. And so we were there in January 2019 and ended up drinking fanny bombs with the Glasgow Supporters Club in their bar before the night. And I still don't really know what was in them, to be honest. But I don't actually remember much of the game, if that probably gives you an indication of what they were. But no, it's a very nice city, a good trip, that. Although Scotstoun is well out of the way in terms of Glasgow. Yeah. That's always a fun trek through a random housing estate to get out there. Right. The last part then, I was just going to look at the first block of games in particular. We've got I think it's only 5 games up to the Autumn Internationals, which I feels a bit short. I'm sure we had 6 last season, but might be wrong on that. But Cardiff start, as mentioned earlier, with Lions at home. Then it's Munster away, Connacht at home, Dragons away, and Edinburgh at home, leading into the Autumn International. So 3 of 5 at home, 4 of 5 in Wales. Not too much travelling in that block. Fordy, what does a successful first block look like by the time we reach those Autumn Internationals?
I think successful as kind of maybe not the bare minimum, but what I'd be kind of expecting is ideally to win all 3 home games and the Dragons away game. I think that would certainly be successful. But then kind of extra successful would be, I wouldn't expect us to kind of go out to Munster and get a win. But if we could come back with a bonus point or 2, I think that would be massive. And that would just set us up quite well then for that little first block. So I think we've done a good job of kind of making the Arms Park a bit of a tough ground for teams to come and play at. I think we really need to kind of solidify that next season to just make it, if we can win all our home games or as many home games as possible, it kind of means that come the end of the season, we're in a good position regardless. And then it's just trying to sneak those kind of bonus points away and maybe the odd win here and there. That's my viewpoint. I think we should be expecting to win as many home games as possible.
Yeah, Fraser, how important are those games against, particularly I'm thinking Connacht and Edinburgh in that run at home? Teams who were thereabouts around us at the end of last season table wise, and who we lost away at Edinburgh. We struggled in our multi-game battles with Connacht as well. Winning those ones is going to be important come the end of the season, even though it feels a long way off at that point.
I know, 100%. I think they're the type of games that define whether you get in the playoffs or not, really. It's we Connacht are not. I know we keep losing to them. They're not better than us. No, but they're like, they're in there or thereabouts. They're exactly like you said. They're not significantly better. We definitely could and should beat them, I think, at home. Same with Edinburgh. I don't rate them that highly. They're around our at where we're at. So I think winning those games, 4 out of 5 of those first 5 games, I think is doable, and we should be looking towards that because, then you pick up the bonus points of the close losses away. Like, I mean, against Munster away, the second game, we could still beat them. I mean, we definitely got the capacity to do that, but like going for a bonus point loss is probably a fair reflection. But I think those Connacht and Edinburgh at home are really season defining. I know it's early in the season to be saying that, but I agree that it's like a pretty fundamental that if you want a successful season, you got to get your home record right against teams like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a couple of good games there, and that Lions game will be a really good one. Hopefully, we get a good crowd for that after all the shenanigans of the summer, and it'd be good to get a good crowd to support the boys in a big game. It was a really good one last season, that Lions home game, and also to send a bit of a message to the powers that be as well. Thanks, gents. I think that's covered everything heading into the new season. The pod will be back next week. We're hoping to have a special guest, so keep an eye on the old socials for that, heading into the first pre-season game for the first team the Saturday after, and Summerfest as well. But until then, 4D Fraser, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you to you at home for listening, and we shall catch you soon. Bye.
That was the Cardiff Central Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming now only on Netflix.